Hey everybody, just wanted to do a quick update here on my wife's tank. It's a 20-gallon tank that I set up just for my wife in her room. And I recently put a couple of small angelfish in here, and so far they're doing really well. I had them in quarantine for about 3 weeks, so I was hoping that since they were doing well in quarantine, they would make the transition to this tank just fine. And I've been having issues with getting angels to do okay in this tank. If I can get them out of quarantine, I buy them from the big chain pet store, so I'm not talking about the best breeding stock in the world. But if I can get them through quarantine, they usually do okay. Once, if they do well enough to survive the first couple of weeks, they're usually good from then on. But in this particular tank, for some reason, I have been having issues with the angelfish going in here. They do fine in quarantine, and then I put them in this tank, and a week later they're not looking so good, and then they're dead. So these two I kept in quarantine a little longer than normal, and I also recently put some mineral stones in the back of this tank. It's poultry grit actually is what I put in here. It's crushed oyster shell and crushed coral. And I'm guessing, adding enough mineralization to the water that the angelfish that can tolerate pretty soft water anyway are doing okay. I think the other fish that were in this tank were already acclimated to water that had been in here for a long time. Not really sure what was going on, but since I added those stones, I've put these two angelfish in here, and again, they seem to be doing okay. So I'm really happy about that, because I think both of these are really good looking angelfish. I really like this yellow, black, and white one. It's not a koi, but it looks really similar. I'm not, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the koi angelfish, but this one has all the colors and, the same sort of patterning as the koi. And I really like this one, though. I love the clear fins on it with just the little hints and traces of black. It's just a really fantastic looking fish. I can't wait to see this one as it matures and grows into full size. And then, of course, the other one is just a good looking fish all the way around. I really like its smoky patterning, and the shape and structure of its fins is just fantastic. It's got a beautiful silhouette. So other than that, not a lot going on in this tank. I've still got the snails in here. You can see two of them dotting the filter intake in the back there. They're just munching away on the debris and stuff that gets caught on the filter intake, so they can have at it as far as I'm concerned. So the snails being introduced into this tank has not really been that big of an issue. And now that I've put these two angelfish in here, if you saw the last update on this tank, I was complaining about the snails were laying eggs all over the glass, and I was thinking about maybe putting some shrimp in this tank. And the idea being that the shrimp would eat the snail eggs, and the snails themselves would go on living and keeping the tank clean for me, but the snail eggs would get eaten by the shrimp. And then lo and behold, once I put the angelfish in here, my wife pointed out that the angelfish seemed to be eating the snail eggs off the glass. So I came in and checked, and sure enough, that's exactly what it looked like to me too. And now we don't see any more snail eggs on the glass in this tank anymore. So I never really thought angelfish would eat snail eggs, but apparently they do, or at least these two do. And so I'm not too worried about the snails in this tank anymore. They've really, really cleaned it up. The back glass was sort of kind of halfway wiped down last time I did some maintenance in this tank. And then a lot of the leaves had really thick, dark gunk that was still on them. I was really planning on doing another treatment with the ChemiClean in this tank, because it just, I had done a lot of work to it. I had removed a lot of the older stuff, but it still had a lot of grunge in there, it was still pretty dirty. But when I added this floating water Sprite, I inadvertently added some snails to the tank, and while they are typically considered to be nuisance snails, they're just regular old pond snails. I'm not talking about anything of any kind of quality. See if we can get a close-up of the two on the tank back there, or on the filter intake rather. Well, I don't know how good that's coming out, but you see what they are. That actually might even just be two empty shells that are stuck to the intake. They haven't moved since this morning when I was in here looking at this tank. So maybe they are just empty snail shells. Maybe the fish have gobbled all the meat out of them or something. I don't know. But at any rate, the snails have not been a nuisance to me. They have not really devoured the plants in any significant way. I don't really care if they munch on that floating water Sprite to a small degree. That stuff grows like a weed. I do have that for sale, by the way. You can check down below, check my email, get in touch with me. I've always got Java Fern and water Sprite for sale. So if the snails eat a little bit of that, I don't care. If they're keeping this tank clean and making it look all nice and beautiful the way they are, that's fine with me. So they can be nuisance snails all they want. If they're doing this kind of a job, I'm not going to worry about them anymore. So I'm not really going to concern myself with putting any shrimp in this tank unless I decide to do it just for fun, just to see if I can have some shrimp in this tank. That might be interesting. But this is one of those tanks that I rarely even see. Again, I come in here once a day maybe to feed the tank. If my wife's got a long day at work or something, I'll come in here and make sure everybody gets fed. And that's about it really. I don't really, come in here that often to even see this tank. So putting, more shrimp and stuff like that in here is really, probably not something I'm going to do. Any rate, that was just supposed to be a little update. Just wanted to give everybody a good look at these two angelfish swimming around. I gotta say, if I had to pick a favorite, it would definitely be that yellow and white one. Yellow, black and white one, whatever. This one, however, is still a beautiful fish. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss any updates. And hopefully we'll get to watch these two fish grow up in this tank rather than, the fate of the other angelfish that have been in this tank. And that way, if you're subscribed, you won't miss any of the updates coming up on this or anything else. So don't forget, this one is the tank that I call my wife's tank. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you real soon on the next one.